How's it going, guys? So we are going to take a look here. This is going to be the first example game with the DimirTrinket deck. Sat down to, of course, play a couple matches. This first one is going to be actually versus the ever so popular IzzetPost. I think straight up you got a pretty decent matchup, especially after the sideboard, simply for the fact that we're running so much land destruction, if nothing else. So opening hand, good. We have 3 lands, we have both colors, and a Trinket Mage even to start searching up whatever it is we need. So, when you see the post come down, first thing you gotta think is IzzetPost. There are other post decks out there, but that is going to be the most prevalent. This means that we are going to be definitely not using as much creature kill as we have. We know we can make some of those sideboard choices later on. Gonna start with the Vault of Whispers. Just there's really no rhyme or reason. It can help if you get early, things like Fume Spitters. I do have, early dead weight, but there's no instance. Gonna, just hit both colors as soon as I can. Opponent doing not much right here. You draw. He made an interesting play here, puts out a Calcite Snapper. So this kind of had me thrown off because this is not a creature that you usually find within IzzetPost. I was figuring perhaps he went for the 8-post blue control. There are a couple versions of mono blue control that do run the locust lands. It's not a common thing to see, but it does happen. So I was considering maybe that was this. Usually they don't even run the snapper. Usually they will run stuff like the ephemeron and the spire golems and stuff like that. But the snapper comes down. I guess he decided it was a nice addition because of the shroud. It can get some early plays. Definitely going to be not so great against me. We do have a full copy of Diabolic Edict in our deck. Obviously got that out there before my turn. Now we have the opportunity here. I apologize, I fast forwarded that, but we have the opportunity here that I drew into a Duress, so I could have played a Trinket Mage. He was tapped out. I knew there would not be a counterspell. But because there was no counterspell, I figured that perhaps Duress might be the stronger option, give me an opportunity to take something out of his hand. You see, I did manage to get rid of Capsize. I think that is one of, if not the most broken card in this deck. So I wanted to get rid of that. Don't know if you're going to be able to read this right here, but he also had in his hand a Cloud Post, a Glimmer Post, a Muldrifter, and a Lightning Bolt. So, it just gives me a head up as to what I'm going to be facing later on in this match. So Glimmer Post comes down next. I thought this was kind of an interesting play, playing that before the Cloud Post. I guess what it gives him, I guess, is the Muldrifter on this turn. So it's his trade-off, being able to play the Muldrifter as opposed to gaining an extra life. I guess at this point in time, because I saw his hand and he had been forced to discard a card, he wanted to make that play. So I decided what I would do is I would first start off with dead weight and stop the Muldrifter. They don't have a lot of creatures, so I just kind of wanted to clear the board as fast as possible, even if that means I just get the opportunity to beat him down with these 1/1 creatures, the rats or the Fume Spitters. I decided that it was best to keep that board clear, and I could do as much damage as I could whenever I had the opportunity. I had the mana available to play the Trinket Mage. I could have also evoked the Muldrifter, but I decided that since I was getting so close on land, the smarter thing to do was to, instead play the Trinket Mage, giving me the opportunity to actually play the Muldrifter and have it stay on the field, as opposed to having it go away. So let's take a quick second right here and analyze what we have as far as options for our Trinket Mage. Not great for this matchup, honestly. We have 2 Executioner's Capsules, which can be used, especially when if they don't all, but most of them usually run the Crusher in some form, whether it's sideboard main deck. So we do have those options available to us if you wanted to grab that beforehand. The Life Staff is a nice thing to have in this matchup, but it's not out there. They're not going to do a lot of damage. We have a lot of creature kill, so it's kind of lower on your list when it comes to choosing a card, your priorities and such. We also have the Spell Bomb. I think is your better card against this matchup, because they run into so many flashback cards. A lot of them run the Deep Analysis, Mystical Teachings, etc. And getting the Spell Bomb. Also they run the Wall, which allows them to return a card. So the Spell Bomb really enables you to clear out of the way. I believe, I went for the Vault of Whispers. Like I just said, I wanted to be able to play Muldrifter as a hard cast, instead of playing the Evoke cost. So I figure by using Vault of Whispers, using my Trinket Mage to get Vault of Whispers, I could make that, definitely happen on turn 5, which is great. So then I drew into Duress, and I kind of actually decided that this was a better play over the Muldrifter, because two things. One, I have Deep Analysis, so I'm still getting the 2 cards out of this that I would have gotten with Muldrifter. The only thing I'm losing is the 2/2 flyer. And the other thing I gain is the fact that I can search my opponent's hand. So you see he has actually... I feel like he was playing his mana a bit odd, because I figured at this point in time he's got a handful of red, so he's really kind of held up by the fact that he has no mountains, but he does have the mountain in hand. I guess it works with playing around the fact that Cloud Post comes into play tapped. But seeing this hand, they're all going to be troublesome for me. The Seismic Shudder is going to kind of wipe out mostly the Fume Spitters. But it can do damage. Right now, that's not my main threat. A lot of the creatures are 2/2, so he's going to need 2 of those in order to, clear out the creatures. Lightning Bolt could easily go, but I kind of went for Rolling Thunder, figuring that I'm going to be able to find the Spell Bomb at some point in time and get rid of that. It kind of is a main win condition for IzzetPost, so if you can get rid of it, like this, I'm throwing it to the graveyard. Between that and Capsize, if next Trinket Mage, I gotta find that Spell Bomb as soon as possible now, in order to, keep him from returning those cards. But getting rid of that, usually these decks run only a single copy of it, so if you, not only get it to his graveyard, but remove it from game, that gives you an increased chance of winning this game. So that is the card I went with. Also, I see that he was without counter spells, so I know that I'm going to be able to get off this Deep Analysis without issue. So, you see I grab into Echoing Decay. Not a great thing for this matchup. Guess it does help if he ends up with a couple Muldrifters on the field, and the Fume Spitter. Also not great, but it will be a body that we can use to swing through. So finally the mountain's going to come down for my opponent, giving him the ability to Lightning Bolt my Trinket Mage, as you saw there. But based off of his hand, I'm feeling pretty good about tapping out to play Muldrifter and getting it through. And he did F6 out and didn't have a counterspell for it. So draw into that Trinket Mage and the Life Staff, which is great. Like I said before, I'm definitely going to use this Mage to hunt down the Spell Bomb as soon as I can. Because I feel it's really definitely what I want to clear out. Like I said, he's usually most Izzet decks usually run a single Rolling Thunder and a single Capsize. So if I can remove those from the game, then I feel that I'm in a pretty good advantage in this, especially for the fact that I run heavy on the creature control, and even without the land destruction that I will be able to bring in the sideboard. I feel it's pretty good. So Staff comes down, Fume Spitter comes down. The two of these kind of make for a pretty good combination, as far as life gaming. Especially you get that Grim Harvest out and you can kind of loop them if you have the mana available. But I do want to play the Trinket Mage to get out the Spell Bomb as soon as possible, like I said. Unfortunately, kind of tapped out, can't play it, but it does at least enable me to use it for the additional black cost on the following turn to draw that extra card. Whenever I have the opportunity, I like to make sure that I can do that. Excuse me. If you have to toss it away without having to, having that black mana available, then do it. But most cases you're going to be able to, and you're going to want to. I'm just a big fan of card draw. So, like I said, every opportunity to do so, I will. So, draw into a Rats, which I will play because I want to clear out some of the cards in my opponent's hand. Whenever I'm playing Control, Izzet, or Mono Blue, any opportunity I have to reduce their hand size, I feel is going to give me the advantage. That may not be the right play, but I'm a heavy Mono Black Control player, so it's just natural to me that when it comes to control, my answer is discard. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ways to handle it. So going to swing through here. This does kind of give me an opportunity as well to draw out. He has that shutter, which can be used to kill off the rats and the fume spitter. He lightning bolts my Muldrifter. Now I know the only thing he has left in his hand is going to be that shutter, and he cannot play it since he's kind of stuck at 1 red. So that's going to work out in my favor. But I am going to now be able to, if this moves along. There we go. I have mana available. I can use the Spell Bomb, and like I said, I can sacrifice it and pay that extra black to draw the card on the way. Nets me a Diabolic Edict. Great if we see another Snapper or even any creature. We do have the Echoing Decay, which can also be played at instant speed, but having backup options is always a plus. So now in his turn, he's going to draw and finally play his Shutter to kill off the Fume Spitter and the rats, but I will gain 3 life from the staff. Like I said, it's not a critical thing in this game because most of the time you will not be taking much damage from this matchup, especially in Game 1. Game 2 and Game 3, you're going to be siding out a lot more of your creature control options to bring in, especially in this matchup, land destruction. So the life gain you get off it isn't really going to help you in Game 1 because you're not going to have many creatures on the board for your opponent. You should be killing them off when you can to prevent all the damage. So I tried to play a Crypt Rats. Not so much that I wanted to pop it right now, but in this match, like I said, swinging through with those 1/1s is going to be kind of a heavy part of your damage here. So, getting that on the field and that extra 1 damage per turn is going to eventually help. It'll eventually at least get him down to a point where, if I'm still stuck on 4 black mana, I get him down to 4 life, and then I can pop the Ret in order to kill him off. And worst case scenario, if I somehow found myself on the wrong end of things, I could have used the Rat plus the Life Staff to instantly gain 3 life. But he does throw out a counter spell for it. Scries through, and I'll just attach the Life Staff. You always want to make sure that you don't forget to attach that. Odds are, no cards in hand, he's not going to have a kill spell available. But even if he doesn't, you want to make sure that is always on a creature. It's just there's no reason not to. Just on the off chance that creature dies for whatever reason, you're gonna gain life. In 1 mana, it's not hard to do. You should be able to throw it around and make sure it's on something at all times. Also, if you saw there, I threw out the capsule. I was down to 2 mana open. Like I said, I have the Echoing Decay and the Edict, but having that 2 mana available, he knows it's there. It makes him hesitate a little with creature play, because he knows he's going to, need some kind of other answer. He knows that whatever creature he puts down is going to be open to dying to the capsule. So swinging first with the Trinket Mage, seeing if that 1 card may have been a burn spell. He does not kill the Trinket Mage. I have to, at this point in time, at least attempt to play the Muldrifter, even though it's very likely he's got a counterspell at this point in time. Which he does. It's inevitable. He doesn't play a land that it's either burn or counter. So it's really kind of sucks because at this point in time I could really use the card draw. I do actually have the mana I do have the Deep Analysis in my graveyard, but I will admit that during this game I did forget about it. That's why usually when I play, I always pop the graveyard open, and at the very least just keep it off to the side here so you can keep an eye on what you have, and if your opponent's running stuff like those flatback cards, then you want to do the same thing. Kind of another interesting play here is using Power Sinks. Usually if they tap out for an X counterspell, it's going to be Condescend, but I know he was running at least 2 copies of Power Sink in his deck, and this is definitely frustrating because we now are going to lose this 2 available mana, so we can't have the option to use a kill spell. We won't have the option on this turn to use Deep Analysis, anything like that. And that is something where, just make sure you read the cards, because that does, when it taps your lands, but it also empties your mana pool. So in response to him playing that, you can't sit here and go, oh, well, I'll just, tap the 2 mana I had available, and after the stack resolves, I'll use the flashback on Deep Analysis, because it does not work that way. Once that Power Sink resolves, not only does it tap your lands, but it also empties your mana pool. So I think it was actually a nice addition to the Izzet control deck, honestly, especially because you do find yourself in such a heavy control metagame. But it just turned out to be more annoying than anything. Another snapper comes down. I do have an edict. I get a rat, but he has, you see, no cards in hand. Usually, I was talking earlier about getting that 1/1 body down just to do a little extra damage to my opponent. But in this case, I like to hold on to the rats just because I want to be able to get rid of that card in his hand. I don't want him, throwing out a counterspell on something important, so I will hold on to the Ravenous Rats until he gets something better. That's just a judgment call. You could feel free to disagree with me on that and say that it's better to just get that body out and finish him off. At this point in time, I feel that I'm in a commanding lead. It's never good for control to have an empty hand. He's down to 5 life. I've got the staff going for crazy life regen. I'm at 26. So I felt that I was sitting pretty well off, and I didn't really have a need to just throw the rat out to get a body. In other matchups, it may be a completely different scenario, and you want the rat out just to have something there to chump block or finish off your opponent fast, whatever your reason may be. And here you see he used the electrostatic bolt to kill off my trinket mage. And I did consider before the draw playing the rats just to swing through since he was down so low, but I did top deck into the fume spitter, so I do have a body available to swing. And thankfully the life staff just makes life that much better because I can swing through 4/2 on every turn with that cute little guy. So he plays a Muldrifter, which does get him closer to having a hand again, but I am going to use the capsule. In a scenario like this, if you've got the capsule on the board, always use it first instead of the card in your hand, because the card in your hand is something that your opponent doesn't know about, and the one on the board he already knows is there, so just absolutely use that first. So rats come down. He is at that point. See, now he does have a card in his hand, so I am going to play the rat before anything else to get rid of this card, if it's a counterspell or otherwise, and not have to worry about that if I want to play my trinket mage afterwards. So he taps out again. This time it is a condescend and not a power sink, which I'm very glad to see. I will swing and then play my trinket mage during the second half. And this is an interesting scenario because I'm at a point in time. You see, I have my 3 artifact lands. I have the life staff. I've already used the spell bomb, and one of the capsules. So this only leaves me with a single capsule left. Something to just be aware of as you play this. You can absolutely just play the trinket mage to have a 2/2 body, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind, and just you have to be aware of stuff like this, that there's only a Grim Harvest left. And now this may have been a bad play here, but you see I have 2 mana available. My opponent knows that I just grabbed a capsule, and by the fact that I did not play it, kind of gives him the insider knowledge to the fact that I had a card that is instant speed and costs 2 mana. Sure, there's a chance that I could be bluffing on that note, but I think Magic is such a mental game, and I think perhaps playing the capsule there would have been the smarter choice, just because he already knows that it's in my hand. The only thing he actually did see from me, he didn't see an Echoing Decay earlier, so he probably thinks I just have an Edict. If he's familiar with this deck, he knows that it's not really based on counter spells. So I'll get the capsule out now. You see he got another post, which is another horrible card from this deck. If you read my discussion or saw the video on my discussion regarding the ban list, you know my feelings when it comes to Capsize and Glimmer Post. But we'll play it out. We'll pass the turn. We do 4, and it's pretty much game over. He's going to draw a bunch of cards here. He actually, finally is able to get a couple of compulsive researches. He got draw off the Prism. Something that he's really been lacking this whole game, and was to my benefit, is the fact that he wasn't really able to draw cards. So, now Muldrifter comes down, drawing more cards, preordained, drawing more cards. 2 mana available. He does, have opportunities, 4 cards in hand to kill off a creature. You see here we go with a bolt. But he's still going to have to at least take 2 damage from the Fume Spitter on the next turn. It's kind of a, I don't know, I guess perhaps this was another misplay and I should have moved the Life Staff over to the Trinket Mage, but I kind of feel like having it split so that I have 2 damage, on each creature is the better play here. But at the same time, I knew consciously that if he had a lightning bolt or something, it was going to go to the trinket mage. Honestly, being at 26 life, it's not critical at this point in the game. You're at a point where it's a little misplay, but you're so far ahead of your opponent that it's not gonna cost you really anything in the end. If he did somehow manage to pull some crazy miraculous comeback off, then you would be kicking yourself. But you have things pretty well dominated. So I did use, again, I talked about not using the spells in hand. If you got a capsule on the board, use it first. So I kill off the Muldrifter so that I can attack through with the Fume Spitter. He's down to 1 mana available. He does have the ability to, through the Prism, play another burn spell, but he's played a lot already, and they're not usually that heavy on it. He's down to 1 life. I know that here's my win condition. I play the Rats. I'm going to be able to sack it for 1 to finish him off. And he's not going to have an answer for stopping that when it comes into play. At the same time, I could have played that first and had the mana available. Just be aware of the fact that and I apologize for those of you who are like, yeah, duh. But Crypt Rats, the X on the ability has to be black mana. It cannot be otherwise. So let's take a look real quick. I pulled up, this is the sideboard that I was running with right here, and that I think is kind of the ideal out of what I've seen. I talked a little bit about this more in the deck tech video, which you can go check out, but I just wanted to give a quick insight to what I did as far as sideboarding for this matchup. Obviously, we are sitting on 6 copies of Land Destruction. I am running 2 copies of Icequake. A lot of decks these days, especially in black, have been, mono black control, have been focused more on Befoul, because it does give you the option to not only destroy a land but kill a creature. The only downside to that is the fact that it's going to cost you 1 additional colorless mana. I like having the Icequake available, even though the ability isn't going to do anything here. It is one of the better options because it comes in at that 3 mana cost. There is the other one whose name I am blanking on right now, that has the Threshold ability, and you do not want to use that one because a lot of your creatures are at the 1 toughness mark, and if you have that Threshold, which you probably will, it will kill off all your creatures. So you won't get the extra ability off Icequake. It will just be destroy target land. But whenever you're in this matchup, definitely use the Choking Sands before Icequake to get the damage off. I also brought in, at that time, 2 copies of Duress. Let's see, I think I actually, in the first game, I made a bit of a mistake. I think I took out the Life Staff and a Trinket Mage, and I think this was not a great option. Spoiler alert, I did lose the second game, and I feel like maybe I would have been able to get it back, but I feel like it's not going to kill you much to remove 1 Trinket Mage, especially in this matchup, because a lot of your options for spells, artifact spells, are not great, against the creatures, because he's, like I said, the Spell Bomb is your best choice. The creatures are very sparse, so it's just I don't think it's going to hurt you. The argument can be made that with counterspells and such, it's going to be more of a troublesome issue to get it into play, but excuse me, that's just how it goes. Ugh, dying. So, on to game 2, after some sideboarding. This was the opening hand I had, and obviously have to mulligan it away because I am sending it only 1 land. It kind of sucks because I'm on the draw, but there's nothing you can really do. I've got a turn 1 play and possibly turn 2, but I really don't want to be in that situation where I don't get that second land and I'm stuck, especially against a deck like IzzetPost. You really don't want to be missing those land drops. You want to be getting the control, discard, etc. going as soon as possible. So I do mulligan to 6. This was the card that I got, and this was a much better hand in my opinion. So I am still at only 2 land, but again I am on the draw, so that puts it to my benefit. I'm sitting on 2 of my land destruction spells, which is fantastic in this matchup. So when you see 2 cards out of your sideboard, and it's going to be a good hand in most cases, especially if you get your land. You see I do hit the 3rd swamp, which does suck a little because I have Trinket Mage, and I would like to be able to have the opportunity to get that going early as well. But it at least gives us, especially you see here, the second Trinket Mage and no island. At the very least, it does give us the opportunity to play these 2 land destruction spells on turn 3. So plays DimirTrinket. He's doing a lot of land go over here. Now, like I said before, when you're targeting a post land, absolutely use Choking Sands before Icequake, so you can get that damage. In this matchup, you want to be able to try and sneak those in whenever he is tapped out and not likely to be playing counterspells. Also, someone can correct me if they think that my reasoning is wrong on this, but I always like to target the cloud posts first. Absolutely, you have 6 land destruction spells, so go after DimirTrinket if you have the opportunity. But I think that Cloud Post is the card that you want to get rid of first. DimirTrinket does give them a lot of life gain options, but in the matchup itself during gameplay, if they don't get the extra mana out of that Cloud Post, then it's going to be able to slow down their game. Now you see I do have options here. I could have played either one of these spells and tried to do this, but I did hold back for the most important reason being that I didn't want to run into a counter spell, and the second reason being that I didn't want to just waste it on a DimirTrinket. So now he's tapping out 2 lands for a Prism. He does play a Cloud Post. Another benefit is a situation like this is go after the Cloud Posts because they're almost more vulnerable since they come into play tapped. If you can hit that first one, right now it's going to tap for 2, but if you hit this before he gets others and he gets it untapped, then you're going to really slow him because he's going to attempt to put down that second Cloud Post after you kill this, and it's going to be tapped, and you're going to have the opportunity to Icequake. So he passes the turn. He's got 1 mana available. I know for a fact that there is no IzzetPost deck that is running Force Spike, so there is absolutely no way that he is going to be able to counter this. And if he is running Force Spike, then just good game because that's so ridiculous and unnecessary. I guess he may have other options at 1, but I felt that this is a good opportunity. You're not going to get many opportunities, especially with high mana decks like this, to play these and not really have to worry about counter spells. So I did have the opportunity. I felt and went after it with Choking Sands. So it's going to slow down his mana a little bit, especially if he misses this drop. Preordained does find him that 4th land, and he has 2 mana open. So I am going to attempt now to get the Trinket Mage off. At the very least, it's going to eat a counterspell, and I do have a second Trinket Mage that I can use later on. If he goes here. I hate the client sometimes, it's just so laggy. But yeah, I could have played the opportunity here to Icequake, but again, I was holding out for Cloud Posts. And I feel that by playing the Trinket Mage now, it really kind of slows him down and gives him... we're going to have to fast forward this turn. Gives him, he kind of has to, because it's such a... it's a target that he has to counterspell because it's such an important part of this deck. And, I have the opportunity next turn. He does use a power sink on it to tap me out, although there's nothing I would be able to do with 1 land at this point in time. So I'm going to attempt to play Trinket Mage yet again. Again, dangerous. 6 cards in hand, 4 mana open and available. But I have to make that. I have to take that chance. And at the very least, it's eating up yet another counterspell out of his hand. It's 1 less counterspell that I have to worry about later on if I want to try and get this Icequake out, or even the Crypt Rats. Like I said, you're at this point where it's 1/1 damage. Fume Spitter is going to come out, and that's something that they just don't want to waste a counterspell on. Drew into yet another land destruction, so I felt, this game going into it, I already spoiled the fact that I lost, but I felt that I was really set up to win this. I may have had a couple misplays later on, but I did have to mulligan to 6, but I did have 3 land destruction spells available to me. The creature base did not quite work out, but what can we do? So he keeps doing the draw go. I do get a duress here, but I will attack first. just, because I find that it's often better to just get that damage through, see if he wants to waste a lightning bolt, and then that's one less thing that I have to worry about, choosing with duress. So I play the duress. He is going to counterspell it, I believe here. Yep, he plays a condescend to counterspell that. And again, I'm more than happy to let him. And he's more than happy usually to play that, because not only, am I going to get rid of that counterspell anyways, but he's going to use the scry ability off it. Puts him in a good spot. But, this goes back to now, I was talking about saving land destruction for cloud posts. But now I'm at an opportunity I want to capitalize on where he is tapped out, and I can go after this Glimmer Post and hopefully slow down his mana. I'm going to use the Choking Sands to do the damage. And like I said, you rarely have a time. Sorry, rarely have a time. Speaking is good, where you can destroy a land and not have to worry about counterspells. So, I have a backup land destruction spell in hand for a cloud post that may come down. I felt that I had to go after that land while I had the opportunity. So he casts out a Mole Drifter, and this may be where I ran into issues, because in game 1 I was all about clearing the way, so I do use an Edict to kill off the Mole Drifter so that I can swing for 1. And like I said, this is probably where I ended up in trouble, is using that later on. So he plays a second Mole Drifter, and I go out and I cast the second Edict. And you'll see in a second why this was not necessarily a great idea. First off, I'm getting a little land swamped here. I don't have options really as far as that goes. I do put out the rats here. I figure that I need the extra body, and if he tries to kill it, I can do damage off it. And this, just again, this was a really frustrating match, because I felt, that I was in such control with all this land destruction. So he plays the lightning bolt, and I had to stop and consider here. It's 14 to 20. Now I could pop the rat and deal 3 damage to both opponent and myself, or I could let him just take the rat and assume that my Fume Spitter is going to last, and I'm going to be able to use it to do more than 3 damage. So that's really what this comes down to. What you have to analyze right now is whether you can do more than 3 damage with your Fume Spitter. And I took the risk and said, you know what, I think the Spitter's going to last, and I'm going to be able to attack him at least 4 times. And that's the only way that it's going to be efficient. So now you see why I made the mistake with the Diabolic Edicts. What I think I should have done is kept it in hand and used the rat to clear off the Mole Drifters. It would have cleared my board, but it would have gotten those off the table. It would have allowed my opponent to go to lower life, and I would have had the Edict available to deal with these snappers. I draw Swamp. I'm going to hold it to kind of just bluff out the fact that I have something, anything at this point in time. The snappers are really going to be troublesome with that Shroud. Fume Spitter would be great if it did not have Shroud, because it would become a 0/3, and whenever my opponent would play a land, he wouldn't want to switch it, because if he switched the power and toughness, it would die. And here I think he made a mistake. He plays the land. It's a 1/4. Oh, well, I guess not. He wanted to make sure that I couldn't chump block and kill it, but it's just, I was so frustrated in this game, and I think it really, put me off. You hear people, talking about being put off tilt, and, this really did it to me. I'm going to play this bomb here to draw cards, and I did it first because I wanted to try and see if there was a counterspell. Maybe he wanted to save something in his graveyard. Odds are that he doesn't. He didn't have any flashback, but just in case, got to take that chance. And then I went after the Cloud Post, using the Spell Bomb to mostly draw a card, and I get yet another Choking Sands. And again, you get this land destruction, and you feel that you should be in such a good place with this deck right now. But it did not work out that way. So opponent gets a Lightning Bolt, which kills off the Fume Spitter, does not give me an opportunity to chump block, and then plays a land to flip those both, and hit me for 8. But as I was saying, you see these players who always get off tilt. At this point in the game, I'm extremely frustrated that I misplayed on those edicts. I had so many lands when I really needed anything but lands. I'm sitting on a Choking Sands, which is kind of a dead card, since my opponent really doesn't have any posts. The only time that it's not a dead card with no posts is in the early game, and you can, pick off his only mountain, or, before he's got this point, he's got 9 lands available. If I destroy one of them, first off, it's not going to be, it's not going to be putting him off kilt, and second off, it's not going to color screw him, so what are you going to do? Draw into the rats, and I think, okay, well, now I at least have a chump blocker and can clear off a card from his hand. And he does, oddly enough, discard a Condescend, and this tells me 2 things. One, that he already has an answer for the rats, and, it was really, I guess, a misplay on his part. He should have played the Condescend to counterspell the rat. I guess he figured that I had the mana to tap out and I would let it happen. It's really not something I would have tapped out, I guess, but whatever. So that comes down. He kills off the rat. The snappers are both going to flip to 8 and swing through. He does have the Cloud Post. I draw into yet another land, and I'll just kill the Cloud Post, kill the Cloud Post. Anyone who's followed me for a while in my articles or my videos knows just how incredibly frustrated I get when it comes to land flood. I usually, in my decks, and especially drafting and stuff, I cut my land down really, really low, because I would much rather be mana screwed than land flooded. You get to these points in games where you need anything at all except for a land, and you would be good, and you draw a land. So snappers come through. They're going to finish me off, and we're going to have to move to game 3. Game 3, I did bring back the staff. I talked about the staff and whether or not that would have saved me, and it just absolutely didn't come into play last game. So, this time in sideboarding, I did bring the staff back into my deck. I had actually sided it out. Opening hand was okay, very, very heavy on the lands, but I do have a Muldrifter, I do have a Choking Sands. I figured I would take the chance, and that I would shoot for evoking the Muldrifter on 3. So, turn 2, I draw into a Fume Spitter, which is great. It gives me an early play. I can start getting that damage through as soon as possible. My opponent, oddly enough, starting without blue, which is not a good thing if you're post. I am going to swing through with the Fume Spitter, and I have the opportunity now to evoke the Muldrifter. And oddly enough, I figured this was a perfect time. He's got no blue mana, it's going to be okay. He had brought in Pyroblasts, and the Muldrifter gets countered. Definitely frustrating. It's also frustrating to be at 6 mana in the first 10 cards of your deck. It's not something it's not a position that I like to be in. So I draw into a Duress, and I said, this is okay, I can see what's going on here. I am going to, usually I attack first, but I do play Duress, and he kills off the Fume Spitter, and that's why I wanted to attack first, to see if he would or would not. So this is his hand. I'm going to blow this up for a minute. This is a pretty awesome hand that he's sitting on, and I'm sitting with a hand that I'm incredibly frustrated over. I'm, already at 6th land. I have no draw. He's got 2 snappers, he's got card draw, he's got 2 counter spells. At this point in time, I basically, when making this choice, decided that, Condescend and Power Sink, they're the same thing. If I decided one of those had to go, the more important thing to get rid of is going to be the Condescend, because it has the Scry ability. Preordain is, another great card, and you got to make your choice, and like I said, just kind of group these 2 together, and if you decide that a counterspell is the right way to go with the Condescend first. Now, I made a choice here that I think was the wrong one, and I thought so as soon as I made it, too. I did decide that counterspells were the more troublesome thing, and I got rid of it. But I think actually that Preordain would have been the right choice. He is without blue mana, and when he gets that 1 blue mana, sure, he'd be able to counterspell, but the one thing he's going to want to do more is draw cards. So I think Preordain should have been the right choice here. But again, I was talking about land destruction and the post lands. Usually I want to go for cloud posts, but now I have an opportunity. He's got no counter spells. I am going to go for the choking on the Glimmer post. This does draw the concede from him, because it's gonna, which was much to my relief, because had he stuck it out, which I think he should have, I could have been in a very bad position having this much land available to me, and knowing what his hand was. So if I were him, I would have stuck it out. But this is definitely a position that you want to go after these lands. I talked about the only times you don't want to hit a post land is in the early game, where you could put him in a position like this, where he's at one land. And so we were going into turn 5 at this point in time, and to be stuck with so few land is definitely not a place that he wants to be. And despite the fact that he couldn't see that I was actually at kind of a disadvantage here, he does decide to concede out that game. So a couple misplays in games 2 and 3, a couple bad choices with sideboarding, admittedly so. But I hope that at least gives you an idea what the matchup should be like, and how the deck can interact at this. I'm blanking. This matchup game. Either way, you choose.